Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today's water cooler chat hosted by the ESA Asian Ecology section. So great to see you all here. I'm Da Fenghui, a professor in the Department of Biology, Tennessee State University. I'm chair of the ESA Asian Ecology section now. So our team includes the vice chair, Dr. Li-Xin Wang from the UIUP Indianapolis, the secretary, Dr. William at the University of Kentucky, and nominated at the Tennessee State University as a student representative. So on behalf of the Asian Ecology Section Leadership Committee, I'm welcoming you to join us today to celebrate the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month with our three distinguished Asian American ecologists. Just in case I forgot, I would like to thank Teresa Moore, the Director of Education and Diversity Program, for her advice and suggestions that made these events possible. So before we introduce our speakers, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, as this is the first time the Asian Ecology section holds such an event. As you may know, the month of May is the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We pay tribute to the generation of Asian American Pacific Islanders who have enriched American history. So the month of May was chosen to commemorate the arrival in the United States of the first Japanese immigrants on May 7th, 1843, and the contribution of the Chinese workers to the building of the Transcontinental Railroad completed on May 10th, 1869. So since the 1990s, the US government has designated the month of May as the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, celebrating achievements and contribution of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the United States. So last year, the US Department of State issued a short 2-minute video to celebrate the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I think it might be a good start for today's events by watching it together. So I will share the short video now. Let me just click this one. There are too many here. Oh, no, this one. Sorry.
The Department of State is proud to commemorate May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The department recognizes AAPI representation in the U.S. government, including in the historic election of Vice President Kamala Harris and the confirmation of Cabinet member Katherine Tai as U.S. Trade Representative. Vice President Harris and U.S. Trade Representative Tai are the first people of Asian descent and the first people of color to serve in their respective positions. We also recognize current AAPI members in the U.S. Congress, including 2 members in the Senate, 16 members in the House of Representatives across 7 states. In the State Department, thousands of Americans are of AAPI heritage and serve in our foreign service and our civil service, contributing to the safety, security, and prosperity of our nation. Many AAPI persons serve in leadership positions at state, many as ambassadors overseas. We also proudly recognize the many contributions of AAPIs in every field and profession across the U.S., including business, science and technology, medicine, entertainment, sports, and the arts. This year, we are particularly mindful of the significance of AAPI Heritage Month as we continue to condemn racism in all of its forms, including racially motivated violence against Asian Americans and those of Asian descent. The Department of State underscores this message and stands with the AAPI community, and we stand with our AAPI colleagues who work in the United States and at our diplomatic posts around the world. The United States is committed to supporting the talent, the contributions, and the innovation of Asian American and Pacific Islanders across our nation, and we are proud to work alongside many of them every day here at the Department of State.
So as you see, the Asian American and Pacific Islanders have contributed significantly to many facets of the American culture and society, to include the science and medicine, literature and arts, the sport and recreation, and governments and the politics. So in ecology, we have many Asian Americans who are working in different branches of ecology and research area. We have students, postdocs, the scientists, and the professors who are working diligently to make contribution to the scientific community and society. So to celebrate the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month this year, so we are very fortunate to have three distinguished ecologists today who will share their perspectives, their research interests, and achievements with us. It's my honor to introduce our speaker now. So after the introduction, the speaker will give 5 to 10 minutes of their presentation. So after that, we will have a panel discussion. So we encourage you to participate in this discussion by live chat below. Our first speaker today is Dr. Ichi Luo, professor at the Northern Arizona University. As a fellow of ESA, EDU, and AAAS, the Ichi has made a significant contribution to global change ecology and ecosystem modeling. So especially, he has been promoting inverse modeling and the data model assimilation ecology over the past decades. Ichi has served on many the national and international scientific committees and is the editor for the scientific journals. So one thing I like to mention here is that he has trained many postdocs, graduate students, and visiting scientists. I'm very glad to disclose I'm one of them. Ichi was my PhD advisor when I pursued my PhD degree in Norman, Oklahoma. So thank you for mentoring and advice and friendship over years. Our second speaker is Dr. Wei Ring, associate professor at Kentucky University of Kentucky. So Wei is an ecosystem modeler and has investigated the climate and agricultural practice on ecosystem carbon sequestration and greenhouse gas emissions. She's a very productive scientist and was awarded the National Science Foundation Early Career Grants last year. So very exciting to hear from her today. Our last speaker is Dr. Dennis Ojiman. I think Dennis really doesn't need any introduction from me. The first time I met Dennis was at the ESA Asian Ecology section mixer in 1989. That's a long time ago when I just came to US. What I heard about him at the time was his new ring in Chinese, mean a big guy or the giant in ecology. So Dennis is an emeritus professor at Colorado State University. His research includes the global change effects on ecosystems around the world. So this research effort has led extensive international work in Asian countries, such as Mongolia, China, and Central Asia, training researchers and managers in topics related to the carbon sequestration and modeling land use and climate change impact on ecosystem dynamics. He has served on the National Research Council Board on Environmental Change and Society. So most importantly, he has been recognized for his international contribution in the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which received the International Panel on Climate Change 2007 Nobel Peace Prize. In 2013, he was honored as the champion of the environmental environment by the Mongolia Minister of the Environment and Green Development. So the speaker will provide their perspective first. So after that, we will have a panel discussion. So please type your questions to the chat window below. We will, call you as Teresa just mentioned. Raise your hand. We will call you to ask your questions. Yeah. So each take away.
Can you stop sharing your slides first?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Let me find my slides. Well, thank you very much, Dafong, for organizing this activity. And also thanks, Teresa, for get us together. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Let me see. Okay. Well, I'm Ichiro, as Dafong already introduced. I'm a professor at the Northern Arizona University. To celebrate Asian American Pacific Island Heritage Month, I'd like to highlight contributions by Asian Americans and the Pacific Island to ecology and climate change science. I add climate change science, and largely is because I work at the interface between environmental ecology and the climate change, and I can draw some personal knowledge in that area. So I plan to highlight those achievements by early career ecologists and the senior ecologists and the climate change scientists, and also try to highlight those ecologists in the leadership role. And also I like to highlight, also make it clear the caveats of my talk. And mostly my talk is based on my personal observations and pretty much kind of anecdotal examples. And I didn't do, I have to admit, I didn't do thorough review. And basically it's a very strong bias toward, based on my personal experience. So if I miss anyone, and if I, didn't highlight some of your achievement, it would be my fault, and I take responsibility for that. And I like to highlight the early career scientists. Again, this is a sample of those early career scientists I know of, and certainly I didn't list all of them I know of. Like she is, I think, or she originally from India, and she worked in the microbial ecology at the Georgia Tech. We're going to talk today. Ying Sun is assistant professor from Cornell University, and Yang is a professor, assistant professor, I believe. I'm not sure if promoted to associate yet, but as from University of Georgia. And both Zhang and actually Lu Zhai, they are a couple. Both of them are faculty at the Oklahoma State University. One work on the theoretical ecology, another is working on quantitative ecology. Chao Qing Liu is, I think, probably promoted to associate professor now in Iowa State. Kai Zhu also promoted to associate professor probably a couple of years ago. And you can see those new generation of ecologists. They are very diverse in gender and the research field, and we can see more women scientists, more women Asian scientists now get to the professional and the tenure track or research career, and also more diverse cultural backgrounds. And to my knowledge, those ecologists with cultural background from India, Pakistan, Japan, Korea, China, and Vietnam, and many of them get ecological research field. And also those young early career scientists that represent research in many fields, ecosystem ecology, theoretical agro ecosystem, probably I will not list all of them. And they also make more outstanding achievements. And Zhu Kai was elected to ESI Early Career Fellow a couple of years ago for his outstanding contribution to research, teaching, and service in the field of global change ecology, ecological modeling, and environmental data science. Ying Sun was elected this year as a ESI Early Career Fellow, and for her pioneering research in plant ecophysiology and the sun-induced chlorophyll fluorescence from leaf to global scale, and for her innovative contribution in land surface modeling and remote sensing. And to my knowledge, at least Wei and Crystal, basically Chaoqing Liu, has been awarded the NSF Career Grant. I'm sure more Asian American ecologists that get an NSF Career Grant, but as I said, that I didn't do thorough review. And I just like to highlight Ying Sun. She was elected as an early career ESI fellow this year. She published her PhD work in PNS about the mesosphere diffusion and the impact on the estimated global land CO2 fertilization. She published her postdoc work, and one of them on the science on the solar-induced chlorophyll fluorescence and from the OCO2. She currently is leading a very active research program at Cornell University. Her program tries to address the issues such as how do plants control the mass and the energy exchange of ecosystem with atmosphere, how do plants respond and the feedback to climate change and the variabilities across temporal and spatial scales, how do plants affect the ecosystem goods and the service. And I just kind of steal the two images from her webpage. You can see this is a chlorophyll at the nanoscales, and then solar-induced fluorescence, those studied at the regional and the global scales. So you can see the new generation of scientists using the very the technique and span very wide spatial and temporal scales. And some of the senior ecologists I'm aware of, like Jack Liu, I'm going to highlight him pretty soon. And Hong Liu is a professor from the Florida International University on invasive species biology. Chi-Kwan Chin from Michigan State, and Jingo Wu from Arizona State, both of them on the landscape ecology, but in the different aspects. And Sui-Jing Hu from the North Carolina State University on microbial ecology, and Joe Zhou from University of Oklahoma on microbial and microbiology and ecology. Lin Zhang is from Georgia Tech on community ecology. Yudi Pan is work at the U.S. Forest Service on climate, fire, and the carbon cycle. Han Qing 10 from the Auburn University, and that one you already know. And this year, Jack Liu or Jingo Liu got being awarded as a ESI eminent ecologist, and for his contribution in many areas, many aspects, such as building the interdisciplinary bridge between ecology and the social science, originated the important concepts such as telecoupling and how to tie the environmental impact to the number of a household instead of a population. And his work contributed to the conservation of great panda and many other species, served as a president of the US chapter of the International Association for Landscape Ecology, and received both the Top Service and Top Research Award, directly mentoring over 50 PhD students and a postdoc fellow. And his NASA and the MSU program, supported over 440 scholars from 170 institutes, and his so-called Chan Net involved over 1,800 scholars. And he has been coordinated lead authors for the intergovernmental science policy platform on biodiversity and the ecosystem service, first global assessment. And also, since I work in the climate science area, also I encountered many of those distinguished climate scientists. So Suki, Manabe, probably he may not know me, but I met him in 1995 when we attended a meeting in Germany, and probably Lian Honggu from Oak Ridge, and he worked on land-atmosphere interactions. Tu Zhong, originally from India, and he's currently working at the UIUC on land biosphere. Jiafu Miao is currently also scientist at the Oak Ridge National Lab. I like to also highlight, Suki Manabe, and as I mentioned, I met him at least, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize for his contribution on physical modeling, Earth's climate, quantified variability and the reliability predicting global warming. He developed the probably first one-dimension single column model of atmosphere in radiative convective equilibrium with positive feedback on the water vapor in 1967. He also developed a comprehensive so-called GCM, and also in early 1960s to simulate the three-dimensional responses of temperature and hydrological cycles to increase carbon dioxide. He investigated the time-dependent responses of climate to changing greenhouse gas concentrations of atmosphere. We're really proud of him as he originally from Japan, and proud of his contribution. Many Asian Americans also take leadership roles in ecology and related to science. Dennis, probably all and he's currently ESI president. Actually, our ESI president elected Shahid Naeem. I think he originally from India, and Gyami Shrestha, and probably many of you may not know that she is originally from Nepal. She has directed the U.S. carbon cycle science program for more than 10 years. I like to highlight also Gyami as her leadership role. She has directed the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science Program Office activity since 2011. She has catalyzed the coordinated scientific advance on the U.S. government strategies in collaboration with the science community. And she supports many multi-agencies coordinate activity. She also co-led the first inter-agent carbon dioxide removal coordination working group, and the so-called SARCO2, and many some of those US the assessment report. So I think as a minority, we need to promote DEI, because promoting that benefits not only society in general, but also our individuals. And like myself, and when we first came from China, when I first came from China to, the first place I came is UC Davis, and I get lots of support from people, my friends supported me and helped me to build my confidence, helped me to collect my English, and helped me to learn the culture in US. So the promoting DEI really benefit myself as an individual and the society as a general. And my own experience make me feel that listening, understanding different cultures really make our own sphere and the knowledge much sound and round. And interacting with the scientists, citizens from different backgrounds really help us. And basically the melting pot for US. That's all. Probably I take too long. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ishi, for very, very nice. Lots of work you put the effort in. Thank you very much for sharing all the scientists, the achievements from Asian Americans. So let's move on to the next speaker, the Wei Ring.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the wonderful opportunity to meet you all today. I would thank you, Dafeng, very kind introduction. And Dr. Luo provided us an excellent review about ecologists and climate scientists with Asian heritage. Many of them have contributed their wisdom, expertise, and long-term efforts in ecology and climate science. I'm only one representative of junior researchers, though I'm not quite young. We are lucky to learn from those role models. And I myself have been trying to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in my research and teaching. So I think that today I want to take the opportunity to share my research experience briefly. I have a hybrid educational and research experience in agriculture, meteorology, and ecosystem ecology. I was educated to conduct field experiments and crop modeling to examine the microclimate condition impacts on plant growth in my undergraduate and master's programs. In 2005, I came to the US and started my PhD program in ecosystem ecology at Auburn University. Just like an ecosystem, it consists of all the organisms and the physical environment that they interact with. We had a big size group in Dr. Tian's lab, and I worked with people from different countries, including the US, China, India, and Nepal. I got a multi-year training in ecosystem modeling to investigate the plant, soil, and atmosphere interactions at regional and global scales. After graduation, I got a chance to continue my research at Auburn. In my postdoc and research fellow appointments, I was heavily involved in several interdisciplinary projects and worked with collaborators in diverse backgrounds. So that trained me to learn how to integrate multi-source data into models, use the ecosystem approach. So with over 10 years preparation, or maybe more than 12-year preparation. In 2015, I got a tenure track position at the University of Kentucky and started my own research program that includes fieldwork, analysis, and ecosystem modeling. Just like my own experience, I always got encouragement and support from my parents, teachers, and family members, colleagues around me in different stages. So I encouraged women and minority students to join my research program. And we already applied a data model integration to quantify ecosystem production, soil carbon storage, and associated environmental consequences under global environmental changes. In recent years, we focus on the carbon footprint assessment of climate smart agriculture at plot, landscape, state, and river basin scales. Those studies help support decision-making and analysis for diverse stakeholders, again, in facing new challenges. I'm learning to work with a scientist, extension specialists, farmers, and landowners to apply suitable management practice in the right place at the right time. It's challenging. Right now, I'm looking forward to new opportunities and collaborations to overcome future challenging scientific questions, now still on the way. So I think today I just want to take the opportunity, have a very brief introduction, and I want to show you that my research involve diverse background, people, and ecosystem ecology also, cares about biotic-abiotic interactions. So we are in a diverse background. We are working together towards the overall goal, make the Earth healthy. So I think I'd better stop here and switch to the next speaker. I'm so excited to learn more from Dr. Ojima. He's a long journey in science.
Okay. So Dr. Dennis Ojima.
Thank you for this opportunity, and really great to hear both from Ichi Liu and Ray Wen. They provide really an interesting perspective on Asian culture and their profession pathway. I'm going to take a slightly different approach and really think about or discuss with you sort of the cultural milieu in which Asian Americans work in, and especially from the perspective of a third generation Japanese American. Although I consider myself more of an American Asian because I was born here in this country. Also, I'm a first generation college graduate and the first of my family to gain a PhD. And so the background that I grew up in, where both my parents were incarcerated in internment camps during World War II. I was born the year the armistice ceasing warfare in Korea. And then I grew up during a period of the Vietnam War. And so a lot of my sort of perspectives on how Asian Americans fit into American culture is based on sort of that experience of this kind of complex relationship with the society in the United States, where Asians were viewed as through some racist lens at times, especially post-World War II, and how our experience, my parents' experience with that was really in their generation was to influence the third generation, which I'm part of, to be more assimilated, to be more American than American. And so there was a blend of Asian culture, Japanese culture, which provided a sort of a view of nature and human relationships, looking at circular patterns of renewal. That's sort of based on some of the Buddhist background that I was influenced by growing up. And so that and growing up on a farm in California, not far from where Ichi came in at Davis, I was in Woodland, California, growing up on a tomato farm, and really understanding sort of the connection between nature and human endeavors, and the importance of understanding the vagaries of nature and how things are produced. And so that, and also during the 1960s and 70s, especially the 70s, that time period where the environmental movement really was taking off. And so that also was an influence. It was a blend of sort of these multicultural perspectives influencing my pathway forward. And I guess the other issue that I wanted to share with you is that, Asian culture is not monolithic. Some of us are born in the United States and blend that Asian culture into how we view the world. There are other Asians who are recent immigrants, have come in the educational system, and they see the value of the sort of educational system, interdisciplinary work that they participate in, and it's really valuable. One of the things that also influenced me, especially through the 90s to the present, is actually to have an opportunity to work with colleagues in Asia. As Dafeng said, I worked in China, Mongolia, Japan. I was able to visit North Korea on a scientific visit. Also worked in areas of Central Asia, and then recently, because of my interactions with my son, who was based in Nepal for his Peace Corps, really saw some of that culture as well. And that in each of those experiences, I was able to understand more different aspects of the Asian culture, how it contributes to how they view the world, how they value nature, and how they interact with nature. And that has sort of influenced how I also look at conducting my research. I was fortunate in the 1990s to be leading a team. I was asked to lead a team to organize around land use change in temperate East Asia. We had a major program called Lutia, and it brought in researchers from Korea, China, Japan, Mongolia, and really try to develop, in the 1990s, which was very difficult, a more interdisciplinary approach of looking at land use patterns and land use change. And then through that effort, really started making inroads to build the social science component that is incorporated into the ecology that we do around the world. The other thing that I learned and observed in many of the Asian cultures, that women in science weren't as advanced, weren't advancing as much. I've seen changes recently in China, but even that growth of sort of leadership among the women scientists in those areas, has been slow. And I see that one of the advantages of having a more open system that we have in the United States is it provided a platform for Asian women researchers to really advance. And I think we need to work harder and harder of advancing Asian women from the various countries to move forward. So these are some of the reflections I have in that, and in summary, that really understanding multiple cultural dimensions as we move forward in our research elements. I think Ichi mentioned that at the end of his summaries of how that openness and collaboration is really important, that to overcome some of the bigotry that we have, we need to work harder, and there's expectations that we do work harder to achieve these goals. And it's understanding our colleagues and their perspectives and working hand in hand with them to make things a better scientific environment for all of us to prosper. So I'll stop there and see what questions arise. Thanks, Stefan.
Okay, thank you all the three speakers for sharing your experience and some very impressive achievement by yours and also by other scientists with the Asian heritage. So now we move on to the second part, the panel discussion. So please, type your questions to the chat window, and also you may raise your hand if you have questions. I see we already have the first question from Carmen C. So do you want to ask your question? Carmen?
Sure. It's clear that many of the Asian ecologists have a global outlook in their research and also a very quantitative approach. What do you think has facilitated that or led to that today? Anyone?
I guess some of the recent Asian researchers that we have that are first generation Asians, their preparatory background in STEM is really at high level. I think that's why they exceed, in the quantitative skills. And because they are coming to the United States, sort of understanding these transboundary connections is very real to them. And so they are better connected and better aware of some of the global issues, I think, because they have transferred over into a new environment, and that they're experiencing this environment in a more global perspective.
Wei, will you take that question? You are very quantitative, very global. Wei, go ahead.
You can go ahead, Dr. Luo.
Well, I think Dennis, made the point very clear, and probably one is, when I was a college student in China, and we emphasized mathematics quite so much, and actually to reveal my personal motive, and we are trained so much in mathematics, and then one of my dreams when I was a college student to discover some equations to describe. I use that to basically develop some equations by myself to describe a natural phenomenon. So that's one of my motivation, and also my personal experience when I came to Davis, and my professor at that time, basically, he said he really wanted to test to see how good I was. But at that time, my English wasn't that good, because I was growing during the Cultural Revolution. I didn't have a good preparation during the high school, middle school. So I started learning English was like when I was 21, and also the English environment wasn't that good. So my English was very poor, but I was prepared for math. And then the first course my professor asked me to take is physical chemistry. In his mind, the physical chemistry is a very, very tough course. And during that course, I didn't understand English, but I remember the math equations. So I did very well for my tests. So that's my personal explanation. And for global perspective, Dennis also touched the key point, since we have environmental issues, a global issue. We have experience in China, Asian, and now experiencing in US. So that's very natural for us to address a global scale issue. Yeah.
Yeah, Carmen, I just want to say that I totally agree with Dr. Ojima and Dr. Luo. And my personal experience is similar. I don't know other countries, but in China, we have a, we pay more attention to mathematics education, and we really kind of have more opportunities to take, maybe the integrated or interdisciplinary program. And so that's maybe history. That's I don't know, but for myself, I'm quite interested in quantitative understanding and investigation of the changing environment, how the changing environment influence human and the society, particularly for the biological system of the production and the greenhouse gas emission. That's definitely related to food security, environmental sustainability, and climate stability. So that's quite challenging, but quite interesting. So to me, so that's I think maybe some background, from the mathematical background education, we pay more attention, and also for the interesting question we really care about. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, we have a second question. The Stacy Kajiyama has a question. So Stacy, please go ahead. Still here?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to thank Dr. Ojima for his presentation. And I'm also a Sansei. My dad's family was incarcerated at Manzanar. Was wondering what motivated you to pursue studies in ecology, and was your family supportive? In my family, my dad became a physician, and my brother was encouraged to become a physician, and so that's what he did. But I was more interested in ecology, and I was wondering if you had a similar experience in your family.
In a sense, yes. I guess professionally, I was initially a disappointment to my parents because I became an ecologist and they weren't quite sure why. But what motivated me was because of the environmental movements that are taking place, and we're, even though the farm I learned a lot on the farm, practical things. The use of pesticides and other chemicals was everywhere. I saw I perceived the harm that was doing to the water and soil, and some of the people working in this area. So that I didn't want to follow that path, and ecology kind of gave me a pathway to where I could study those problems and then be able to find solutions. And so that was my motivation, is sort of understanding how nature can produce all these wonderful things that we depend upon, but how can we do that with less chemical input and less industrial farming, and so that led me down that path. And there are a number of opportunities that I took advantage that got me into the international global change world that broadened my worldview and my thinking and research.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So, we have many the first generation the Asian Americans here in the ecology area, but for our kids, so quite some of them, they moved to the other area. So, what kind of the work we can do to encourage them to continue the research in ecology? I'm just curious about this. Maybe a difficult question.
I think, for Asian Americans, that the issue in, the first time I heard about the circular economy was in China at a workshop there about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And it has a lot more resonance today. And I think with the global change issues and thinking about sustainable development goals, making it meaningful about how this current generation, this new generation, really can contribute to solutions in those areas, that these are more important existentially for our global well-being than being a physician or an engineer. And so I think working with them and showing them that, how nature recovers itself if given a chance, and that if we don't overconsume. And so providing those kind of cultural frameworks of how this recycling, renewable life cycle is, part of the world system, the earth system they live in, and how do we actually not only, use our Asian culture and families to do this, but extend that more broadly to other cultural groups as well.
And
Well,
yeah, Dr. Lo, you can go ahead.
Well, Dafeng, to answer your question, my daughter continued to work in environmental ecology. Certainly, I didn't influence her much, but she's working on ocean carbon cycle modeling. So she kind of continuing in a similar disciplines.
That's good.
So probably a lot of those, thinking about so many the area or discipline possibility of job possibilities. So statistically, you always have very, very small chance for your off disciplines working in the same kind of a type of job, a similar type of job. Yeah.
And Dafeng, my kids are still young. I don't know how to answer your questions, but I know we cannot force them to choose any job in future. But at least I can show them that my passion. Tell them that what I'm doing. So for the future, the job market for themselves, maybe they need, make a decision by themselves. But I want to let them know how important we are doing now, what we are doing regarding environmental science, climate stability, resilience. That's quite an important question, influence our daily life and the whole society, even the Earth. Health sustainability. So yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So probably, I encourage my daughter also, try to get out to the nature. When she come back from the school trip, I already talk about, ask her about the trip. What she liked, the kind of the natural world, but she eventually moved to another direction. But anyway. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Teresa has a raised hand.
Okay. Just go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Yes, I was listening with great interest and was wondering, what is your process, or any one of you, what's your process when you develop a research question or when you develop your studies? Because, these are big questions that you are interested in. And regardless of the skills that you have, I think you probably can't answer them all by yourself, right? So what kind of process do you engage in your work? And can you shed light on how you derive at something that everybody can agree on to study? Yeah. So if there's anything that you might add to that.
Well, probably I'll take a first shot on the, when we decide what to study, actually these are influenced by many factors. And first of all, we usually read the literature and influence and also we go to meetings and listen other people. And, like my career, I changed so much and take turns. Most of the time is determined by the community, some of questions in community try to address and combine my own ability to address them. For example, at Davis, when I went there, I studied agriculture, and then somehow UC Davis at that time didn't have a PhD program in the individual area. They only have so-called a big area like genetics, ecology, or those areas. So I was studying agriculture, but my dissertation research is about agriculture, but I no degree in agriculture, so I had to take ecology. And then during the course taking, and at that time, global change research actually is just the start booming, and I still remember at that time Time magazine has a serious paper about the global change. So those paper, Time magazine is kind of a popular journal. It's not science journal, but those scientists wrote a serious paper in 1988. So I think I was influenced by those papers, articles, and then gradually shifted to these, attend the ESA, and so that's how, that influenced me to make a decision about how to do particular research.
Yeah, I followed the Ichi's advice and the research area. So I continued my research in climate change ecology. But after, I moved to Tennessee State University. So we have agriculture. So I kind of switched a little bit to agricultural research area, but still we focus on the global warming, climate change, these kind of things. But we just integrate with the agro, the crop system. Yeah. So that's kind of my research.
And Teresa, I want to share some idea. For me, I'm thinking that for one scientific question, normally driven by your interest, your research interest, and based on your capability in different stage. Just like in my master degree, I only look at the plot level and look at the microclimate conditions that influence the plant growth. In my PhD program, I use the ecosystem ecology concept, consider the regional global scales that involve a lot, not only the micro, the plant soil atmosphere interactions, and also consider the physical environment across to large scale involve upscaling, downscaling data issue. So that's kind of the more you interested in the research topic or frontier study, the more involved a lot of data and other disciplines, and drive you to learn more. So kind of sometimes based on your personality, just like when I look at Dr. Ojima, people look at him as a team builder and a coordinator. I'm thinking that that he has a broad view, and Dr. Luo also has field work, modeling work. They definitely coordinate many things in one big view. So I think that questions depends on your interest and capability. So
Okay, so Teresa, we are get to the end of today's the chat here. Yeah. So I think we had a great discussion today. So this can just we cannot just stop here. I think this is just the beginning of the conversation. So we need to continue this discussion and educate and share our culture show our equity and achievement and work together with all peoples to make more contribution to the ecology community and the society. So I like to thank our speakers and all the audience for your participation in this discussion. So we want to especially thank Teresa for her advice and suggestions and all the setting with the ESA. So thank you again, everybody. So I think we will see you guys at the ESA meeting in Montreal, hopefully. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you all so much for participating and for a great panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.